difficult is it to defend the Democrat president?
There is no defending the indefensible as far as I'm concerned. And I say this as one who supports Joe Biden's presidency. As far as I'm concerned, the execution of the Afghanistan withdrawal is totally on Joe Biden. Don't get me wrong. I totally get that Joe Biden has been boxed in by Trump's own policy. The fact that in this past few years, the Taliban were empowered by the weakness of America on the ground. Trump pulled out thousands of troops. Trump was the one that demanded that 5,000 Taliban prisoners be released. All of these decisions that were made all aided what we find today. But there is no denying that the withdrawal was on and is on Joe Biden's watch. So the utter chaos we're seeing is on his watch. As far as I'm concerned, it was preventable. It was avoidable. And when Scotty talks about, oh, this just shows a great weakness. No, I don't doubt that better judgment should have been applied. But please, this thing happened overnight. This is taking 4 years to get here. So whatever we're seeing today, as far as I'm concerned, Afghans who have supported and helped Americans on the ground, they must not be left behind. This must not be a case of America using and dumping people once again. Americans who are still in Afghanistan should be pulled out safely. What we must see right here with the UK, with the US and its allies, is that they must pay the price for going into Afghanistan, for turning the country into what it is today, because they all contributed to it. And we must understand that this is important. We cannot leave allies behind. And all those Afghans, journalists, activists, women, young girls, so many of them risk their lives to help Americans, help British people on the ground.
Okay, let's bring in Scotty. Scotty, to what extent does President Trump have to accept some responsibility? He held up a big sign saying, "Dear Taliban, we're coming out before the 11th of September."
Absolutely. He actually posted that he wanted to make sure that the American soldiers were pulled out, but there's a complete difference to how Trump would handle it. But I'm actually going to back it up past Trump. I'm going to actually put this in the fact of President Obama in the 8 years that he was in office, in the chaos. Let's remember, President Obama pulled troops out. He released prisoners. He sent troops back in. This is not just for one president, Republican or Democrat. This all the way goes back to the very beginning. And the reason why we said that we were going into Afghanistan in the first place, this has been used as a major moneymaker for the contractors, the industrial military complex that totally reeks and has such a fierce hold in Washington, D.C. They have just thrown money at it, thrown weapons at it. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is going to be all of that money on weaponry and machinery and all of the things that cause mass destruction. We literally just left it for the terrorists, for our enemies who we've been fighting, which is not only insulting to those families and those soldiers who lost loved ones over there in the last 20 years, but it's very scary to know what's going to happen in the future, how emboldened they are, especially when you have countries like China that are already saying, we're going to recognize the Taliban as equal, and other countries stepping up saying, you know what, we'll actually do trade with them. This is not the type of government that is going to be just trade focused, going to try to build itself economically. We're already seeing the horror in the street. But how the world is going to deal with it, I know one thing they're going to do. They're not going to rely on the United States next time to try to handle the peace in that in that region.
Shola?
Well, let me just add this. I think it's all well and good if we want to go all the way back, but if you're going to go all the way back, you should go all the way to the beginning from Bush and Blair up till today. I think that the point here is that we find that with Western allies, the moment they lose strategic interest in a country, they dump that country faster than you can say the country's name, and that's what's happened with Afghanistan. The heartbreaking scenes we see in the airport is because, as far as I'm concerned, there was no clear thought out plan to be able to withdraw people. And I would like to say this. Look, as far as I'm concerned, Joe Biden may not have been able to deal with a lot of the things that Trump had already put in place. And remember, Trump has only just said recently that he set Joe Biden up. But I cannot for the life of me understand why. I cannot for the life of me understand why, if America can send 6,000 troops in now, why those thousands of troops could not have been sent in before May 1st to ensure that this chaos doesn't happen, to ensure that the Taliban does not just swoop in. I do think that Joe Biden made a compelling case as to why America could not remain, but he did not answer the question. This was no longer about why America should stay or leave. This was about, well, if you're going to go, go, you can't just leave your allies hanging. You can't just leave women, young girls, journalists, activists, those who risk their lives just hanging. And that is what is totally out of place here. And there was no meaningful commitment drawn from the Taliban before America left. So, and this is not just the US, it's also the UK, it's also the UK. So much more needs to be done. And let me just say this, the same people that are pointing hands at Joe Biden, the Republicans, all of them, even in this country, that say, oh no, look at what is happening in Afghanistan, the same people who are going to demonize fleeing Afghan refugees because they don't want Afghan refugees in the UK or in the US.
Is that right, Scotty?
I do want to add one. I do want to add one thing onto what she said. It's not just about Joe Biden, what he's doing in this fact. I think, like I said, we can all agree that soldiers needed to go. The bigger issue on this is why? Why did he not listen to his intelligence? How could you be so blindsided, supposedly, when anybody from the outside looking in? And I don't think America just dumped Afghanistan. I think that's exactly opposite, considering the billions of dollars that we've spent, the 2,300 lives of servicemen and women that we've lost. We're not just dumping Afghanistan. We should have left a long time ago. The question is, why are we doing it so irresponsibly? And you're right. It speaks volume from the fact that our Pentagon, our State Department stood up today and said that they could not go in and rescue these Americans and rescue those that have helped us, for those nationals that have helped us for the last 20 years. I don't believe that to be true. Not with everything that America's been able to accomplish. I guarantee if they wanted to go in there and get those people out of there, they should be able to. And I know they can't. The problem is it's just so disorganized between the State Department, the White House, as well as the Pentagon. Can we get them all in the room? Maybe they get off vacation and actually pay attention to the world and the chaos that they've created by their lack of ability to handle it.
To be fair, Joe Biden did get off his vacation, go to the White House.
He did,
but I don't think it's about. I don't think it's about an intelligence breakdown, because from what we know of Joe Biden, aside from the fact that he's an empathetic leader, we know for a fact that he does listen to intelligence. I think that he was either grossly misinformed. I think he should have known better, because even the layman on the street knew that the Taliban would swoop in the moment the West, leaves their borders. So I don't buy the whole narrative around, well, you know what, there'll never be a situation where there'll be a helicopter, taking fleeing Americans off the roof. I never bought into that, because that did not make any sense to me. Everybody knew that the Taliban had been empowered in the last 4 years during Trump's presidency, with the photo op, with him basically allowing it to happen.
But my question, stop trying to blame this on Trump.
My question to all of us today is this. If you want to deal with the real issue of the Taliban, it's all well and good, the international community coming together saying that we want to do something about it. Why aren't they doing something about the countries and people who are arming the Taliban, those who are funding the Taliban? How can it be that after 20 years, the Taliban is still running stronger than it did 20 years ago? That makes no sense to me.
The United States are the ones arming the Taliban right now. We left all of those weapons. We left fighter jets. We left planes. We left everything. Instead of, if anything, burn the equipment. We armed them. So that falls on Joe Biden. That has nothing to do with Trump.
No. Listen. I've already said there is no defending the indefensible. I do expect, as far as I'm concerned, that this current administration should have done better in evacuating and withdrawing. But the point here is it did not happen overnight. Let's not overlook that. And I'm saying that I agree that on the ground right now, Americans are the ones basically arming the Taliban. But it's not just Americans. There are other countries, the same countries we shake hands with over the G7, over the United Nations. These are the people and the countries that are arming and incentivizing the Taliban, and we're doing jack all about it. And then people who get to Congress, people who get to, UK Parliament, making all these big speeches, but doing jack all about ending the problem. And that is what we need to do. The Taliban should not be stronger than it was 20 years ago. How is that even possible?
Okay, we started with you, Scotty. We've ended with you, Charlotte. That's how it works. It's good to talk to both of you. Thank you very much indeed.